Welcome to How to Run Profitable Retreats podcast, the podcast that guides you not to only host retreats that thrive financially, but also transform people's lives. I'm your host, Lainey Cavazos, and each week I bring you the best strategies and personal insights to help you create retreat experiences that transform lives, both your clients and your own. In our journey together, we'll dive into the secrets behind successful retreats, from crafting a unique atmosphere to mastering the logistics that ensure profitability. Whether you're tuning in for inspiring interviews with leading retreat experts or seeking actionable advice in our solo episodes, this podcast is your go-to resource for turning your retreat visions into reality. Don't miss out on any of our episodes and subscribe now. For more tools and a free guide on creating your own six-figure retreat business, visit theretreatplanner.com. Now let's get started and make your retreat dreams come true. Hello, welcome everyone to another episode of How to Run Profitable Retreats. I'm your host, Lainey Cavazos, and I'm so excited to have James Yates here. And he is the founder of Reignite Retreats, but he's a high-performance coach, wellness industry thought leader, and retreat consultant dedicated to helping others reignite their lives. With 2.5 decades of experience, he understands the challenges of maintaining balance and well-being. Through his ecosystem of companies, Reignite Retreats, Reignite Life, oh my gosh, I'm so excited, Fitra Pro, I cannot pronounce that one properly, and retreat consulting, he empowers individuals to achieve optimal health and energy. James also shares his expertise globally as a sought-after speaker, having reached over 200,000 people from stage. So I am so honored to have you here, James. This is such an amazing opportunity for everyone who's listening to learn from you and, see a little bit more about what 2.5 decades in the industry brings to the table.
Lenny, it's such a pleasure to be here, and what you're doing here is so important for our industry, and I'm really excited to unpack this today and to dive into a little bit about how we can all, up-level the professionalism of the industry at the same time.
Oh my God, yes, please. I am so excited about this topic because I'm always talking about don't be a freelancer, be an entrepreneur next, and then now don't be an entrepreneur, be a business owner. So it's kind of like the stepping stones. And I see a lot of people in the retreat industry that treat their business like a freelancing opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a real shift over the last few years. I think what we saw with retreats originally was there were a lot of retreat venues and people would go and obviously, retreat for themselves. Then we started seeing real programs kick in. And that was on the back of the boom in the fitness industry and health and wellness in general. And as you know, I mean, it's a multi-trillion-dollar industry, health and well-being, and it's only going to continue to grow. So what people have started to want to do is to get into the retreat game. And a lot of the time it's been, professionals that have got some form of health background, whether it's, a health coach or whether it's a yogi or some form of thought leader within their profession. And so often retreats have been a great add-on to a business, great little extra profit center. But the reality here is that we're going through another shift now where we've got to shift exactly what you said from a mindset of just running a retreat to now almost owning the retreat company, right? It's a real shift in terms of how we approach this, because when we start to see this as a company or a business, we start to look at things from a systematic perspective much differently to if we were just, running an extra sort of offering as a one-off. And the reason that this is so important is because if I look at my own journey running events and retreats, when I first got in, it was exciting. I wanted to change the world. And we all know that when we're first in any industry for the first time, we're in that unconsciously incompetent phase, right? It's like ignorance on fire. We're really excited, but our skills are quite low. And when we discover that there are a lot more things that we need to know, then all of a sudden, motivation easily drops and, we become consciously incompetent, right? So we've gone from, right, I'm going to change the world. This is going to be easy. I'm going to run a retreat to, oh my gosh, this is actually much greater than I thought it was going to be. I actually have to fill it. Oh, I thought everyone was going to come and show up, but now no one support it, right? So when we go in that journey, we've got to take this from a different perspective, which is, okay, so if I'm going to join and run a retreat, I've got to look at how I'm running this so that I can systematically put things in place so I can later on scale it. So even if the first one doesn't go 100% to how I thought, if I've got the mindset that this is a business, I'm going to continue to show up. And I always love in business the 10,000 hour rule. I don't know if you've read Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. You know, he talks about
he's one of my favorites.
Oh, I love it. Like, you know what? I love the way that he writes, right? And he
Yes. It's just
easy to understand, but still with so much wisdom there. And you know, the whole book with Outliers was the fact that, you know, these masters of the craft in any industry had done 10,000 hours of practice. And so 10,000 hours in a business, that is 5 years full time. That's 40 hours a week, 5 years to do your 10,000 hours. So the reason I bring this up is that if we're approaching this as an entrepreneur, we're probably only going to have 1 or 2 attempts at something. And if it doesn't work, our entrepreneurial mind kicks in, we keep going to something else. But if we have a business mind, we've got to do our 10,000 hours. Right. And if we do our 10,000 hours, we're going to, by the end of that, become an absolute expert. We're going to know what doesn't work. We're going to know what works. We're going to know what systems are put in play. And ultimately, we can achieve many goals when we stick in for long enough. So that's how I like to approach any business, but especially in the retreat industry right now.
I think this is so important what you're just saying, because if we also look at the numbers of like the years that usually a business takes to really like booming, right? It's between 3 to 5 years. That's the moment. That's the moment where you're really becoming an expert on your craft.
Yes. Yeah.
So it just makes like it's logical, right? So for me, it's just like, well, yes, okay, of course, there's some businesses that they will boom, but then many times they're not sustainable, right? They're just like up, and then they don't know how to stay up, right? And it starts going down. Yeah. So this is so important when it comes to retreats. And also because you've been in events, I've been in events, we understand that it is a lot of work.
Yeah.
At least the first couple of times, right? Yeah. It gets
I always joke. You know, it's talking on that just quickly. So if we've got anyone watching this that has sort of said, well, you know, if you've come from an events background, it might be easier. I remember running my first retreat for 15, 12 people, I think it was. And I remember coming from an event space where we used to speak in front of thousands of people. And running a retreat for 12 people was much more difficult than running an event for 500 to 1,000 people.
Oh, yes.
You know, because there's so many moving parts, right? And so, yeah, going back to what you're saying, I mean, it's so important that we take this with that, right? I'm going to stick in and I'm going to learn throughout this journey. So I can only gain and learn rather than lose anything if I do my time, which is so important.
Yeah, and I think this is like you're touching on something that I love talking about, that it comes about like retreats, they have an intention. There's a transformation result at the end, right? And I used to be like in the events industry, and I used to run amazing events, like, you know, dinners in the Giza pyramids, and like, you know, I was meditating in the, you know, in front of the Giza pyramids by myself. Like they would open the venue for me because I was running an event there, and the event had nothing to do with meditation, and it was amazing. And people would come and they would leave with big smiles, right? And I would get amazing messages saying, oh my gosh, that was the best event. Da, da, da. There was no transformation, right? They had a nice experience. But when you show up to a retreat, you have an intention. You're showing up, you're paying from your pocket to be in that event because there's something you want to change in your life. So it raises the stakes for the retreat host.
100%. 100%. So it's a true responsibility, isn't it? I mean, and if we go in with that mindset, which is, you know, I'm responsible for multiple people. We're not here to give them the answers, but we're here to hold the space so that they find the answers. It takes everything to another level, and I think that's when we shift from the mindset of gain, as in running a business for me to make money, to again responsibility to serve. And what I love is that quote, you know, if you help enough people get what they want, you'll get what you want, right? So on the back of all of that, we all win anyway, which is absolutely cool. What a great industry to be a part of.
Oh my gosh, yes. But and I think you're really talking and some important about fulfillment, right? Yeah. Because I see a lot of retreats happening every day, every week around me. And I get to witness other retreat hosts. And it's so sad, right? Like, and it really, like, you know, my heart is like, oh my gosh, why? Like, it's so sad when people are not like ready mentally to really undertake what a retreat takes from you and what you give and what you receive back. And then suddenly you'll see the retreat host hiding in the room and leaving the people on their own for 1 week. And I'm like, how? Why? You know what I mean? Like, learn how to hold space for people beforehand. Understand the transformation that you're offering, the space that you're offering for transformation. What is your capacity as well, right? Like, I remember one of like the first podcast episodes I was a guest on, like, yeah, like over 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. I had to do like some troubleshooting for someone coming that wanted to host retreats. And I said, like, okay, so how many people do you want in your retreat? And she's like, 500. And I'm like, wow, that feels like a lot. Are you sure? Right? Are you sure you want 500 people? And we went deeper into the work and she realized, oh my gosh, she wanted 8. Like really,
Yeah.
really. She could hold
Yeah.
space for 8 people.
Yes.
And it's something that happens more often than not out there. And then people are burned and they don't want to go to retreats again. So we do have a responsibility to keep the standards in the industry high.
Yeah, and I think when we talk about these standards, I think let's dive into this a little bit more, because this is this opportunity I see. So if I look from an entrepreneurial business opportunity, it is actually how do we up level the quality and the delivery, and also the integration of experiences now. And you've been helping people with that for a long time, right? And it's not just coming in and having the experience now, but it's how can I help that person that's there walk away with practical transformation, practical skills, practical tools, and how can I help them beyond the retreats? How can I stay connected so that I can help them beyond and integrate that into their lives? So when we first ran some of our first retreats, it was around the retreat was the business, right? So it was going in and it was delivering. And when we finished, I remember feeling absolutely exhausted but fulfilled. And all of these people walked away and said that was amazing. But when we actually think about what those people gained, there was 1 or 2 people that might have lost 20 or 30 kilos in the next 6 months, which is a great testimonial. But what were all the practical things on the daily basis? And so, a lot of people running retreats for leadership or mindset or health and well-being or whatever it is, we've got to go back to the foundation, which is what is the first 3 to 5 key outcomes that everyone in that room, no matter their background, is going to gain. And if we can find a core, everyone else will go on their own journey, but if we can find a core outcome that we're looking to drive with, then what happens is if we continue to run that retreat over and over and over again, we become better and better and better at defining that outcome, but also delivering the quality of that product. And I think what happens often at the moment is we get all excited. It's that flashy, future syndrome, which is, oh my gosh, I've just run a retreat in Dubai. Now let's run one in Costa Rica. Let's now run one in Mexico. And let's go from a detox retreat. Oh, now we're going to run one that goes deep, right? So we're splitting our focuses, and we're not really refining that one product first and just getting really, really good at it, time and time and time again. And, if you look at a lot of these, I often talk about our industry has the potential to be really a systematic business in the way that the fast food industry delivered for that particular market. Obviously, we're delivering on a completely different outcome here. But what the fast food industry have done really well is they've systemized steps, right? And if we can get really good at clearing it up in our head so that everything is that simple, it's like there's in one hand, there's like 5 things that we remember to do, then it's going to allow us to not only refine and exceed in our product, but then it's also going to allow us to then duplicate that time and time and time again. So if we do want to run a retreat in a different location, we've still got the formula. And when I look at what you do and you're training people and you're helping people, you have the formula. And that's what we've got to get better at as a whole here. So it starts with the mindset of, am I running a retreat to am I owning a business? And then if I'm going to own this business, am I going to make sure that I actually become really, really, really good at this so that my guests get the best possible outcome and I have the ability to scale that business?
Yes, I love this. And, inside of one of my programs, actually, like the whole thing is about building a retreat business. And we do it by building your first retreat, but we build it in a way that it's rinse and repeat.
Yes.
You do it once and then you can go do it all over again, and you do it all over again, and until it's not pristine and that you feel like, oh my gosh, there's no improvements, even though there's always improvements,
Yes.
right? And you're like, yes, then you add the second layer. And then you do one, like maybe you shift something and you refine it. And maybe your ideal client becomes more refined as you keep going deeper and deeper and deeper. But as people in the, coaching space, wellness space, we feel we have this need to be creators. So we need to be creating new things every single time.
Possible, right?
And the reality is that we just need to recreate certain things to make it better. And that actually feeds our creative need to create new things, because we're still creating, but we're just more than creating, we're refining, until we have something that is like, it's amazing. It's like when, I don't know, I love like, this macaroons from La Durée, right? Anywhere in the world I go, they're the same and they have the same flavors, so I can go and have that same experience. And their shops, they're always in this kind of like mint green, and they have the towers of macaroons and all these things. And I know I'm talking about things that are not very retreat oriented. It really works in the refine them of your offer, of who you are, of just people knowing that when they come and work with you, they're not flipping a coin.
Yes. Yeah. This is a really important point. Yeah, it's a standardization, but it's a standardization of quality consistently. So we're always pushing the boundaries to improve the experience, but how we actually operate that experience is familiar. And if I look at guest return rates around the world, often guest return rates are quite low. One thing that we found, that we started running a cooking retreat a few years ago under our retreat company, and the reason I bring this up is because once we started running that, cooking has to work very systematically, right? Like you can't forget to teach someone how to use a knife, right? You got to do it first, and then you show them the recipe, and then you get them to make it. And so from learning from that, what I realized is we could improve the produce, but we didn't change the steps. And when we actually started to, put this consistency in place with this, we would have the same guests come back 3, 4, 5 times within 18 months to the same retreat, because the familiarity, which was the culture that we built around the system. So the defining factor for a lot of companies is it's the culture and the community that you build, but people feel that they understand, or they have a knowing inside that you're going to deliver on what they're looking for, because they've seen it happen multiple times. And I think that's a key thing. And I think the way that we get there is we need to shift from being an emotional producer to a permanent protocol producer. So in the entrepreneurial world, if I wake up and I feel a bit flat with energy, I may not make any calls today. I may not take action. I may not do the things I need to do to build the business. And so if I'm having a good day, I'll get the momentum running and I'll keep going. And if I'm having a bad day, I won't do a lot. I'll take a public holiday, right? And that's the mindset of a lot of people that come in from, a health professional background that says they want to add on a retreat. But if we can shift our mindset to, no matter what, I'm going to work with permanent protocol production, as in I'm going to take the same amount of action every day, whether I feel like it or not, that's going to lead us to systems within our business that's going to lead to a familiarity, which is ultimately going to lead to guest return rates. Right. And that, it all starts with us. It all starts with that mindset of how we're going to show up and how we're going to define, how serious we are about building this.
Yeah, and I have to say, like, I train on productivity, and it's one of the biggest things that I bring into the table. And I even tell people, December, your productivity rates drop by 25%. So take that into consideration, right? And I always say, like, hey, you need to make a list of 3 non-negotiables that need to happen in your business every day. If you do not feel like it, those 3 things, they need to happen, and they're non-negotiables, right? Like, I travel a lot, and I have like these things, they need to happen, right? I might need to like write something or whatever it is based on my whole overall large marketing campaign, right, for the whole year. And I know if I don't do it, then it's like when you want to go to the gym and then one day you go, and then say you're like, well, maybe I'll go a half an hour later, and then you don't like, and then the next day you're like, well, maybe an hour later, and then 3 weeks in, no more gym.
100%.
So
100%.
you want to see, right, those patterns in your life and see if you're repeating those patterns in your business.
Yeah.
Because many times they're correlated. Not every time, right? You can be consistent in certain things in your life and not consistent on others, and that's okay. But many ways you act in personal things that you're interested in is the way you're going to act in front of your business.
100%. And it feeds into it so much. It's a little bit like when we exercise, we just know that we're going to be more productive in things. And if we're more productive and permanently in action with the key things that you mentioned, you can only win here. And this is the thing. I think what I've seen, I mean, I always say that my partner Chantel and I, the reason that we're still in business after 20 odd years is because I never quit on the same day that she did, right? So I get that we want to
yeah,
we
I
want
love
to
that.
quit on days, right? Some days we just want to give up because things aren't going to plan. But it has been the permanent protocol production that gets us here. And if we find that there are these things that we need to do daily that are non-negotiable and we're still not doing them, we're either going to drive them with purpose because purpose drives productivity, or we're going to drive them with accountability or fear of loss, right? So this is where we got to define it. So if I'm not doing these things, how much do I really want it? Or if I don't do these, what am I not going to have? Am I going to lose my house? That might drive a few people towards action as well.
Yeah.
Or it might be as simple as, hey, Lenny, I need your help to hold me accountable, right? But no matter what, we need to define what's holding us back, if something is holding us back with that productivity. Once we're in the zone, that 10,000 hour thing becomes pretty cool. And I love the fact that you have those three, define those three things, because what you can measure, you can improve. And if you can't measure something, you can't improve it.
Oh my God. This has been my topic for like the past 2 or 3 weeks. What gets measured gets done. What gets measured gets done. It's just as simple as that. And I was recording another episode earlier with like Erica, and she's amazing because she helps business owners get funding for their business so they don't run their business on personal credit.
Yes.
And she was like, everyone is running on the entrepreneurial world. You need to move to business owner. That means you need to measure things. And you might think, I'm good at math, bad at math, right? I can't do the math. Yes. The reality is that if you don't measure your business, you don't know where you need to change, grow, and scale. It's like, this is the perfect way for you to have a clear path of action. Yep. And I think it's so true.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Really fascinating times. I love this conversation. Awareness is so important here towards what we're talking about, because again, if we don't know something, we don't improve it either. So awareness is key to transformational change. But I think if I push that message again, which is there's an opportunity to up-level the professionalism, and it actually goes back to your own productivity, and it goes down to how you show up in terms of your own retreat and the systems that you put in play, foundational sort of stuff. But the sky's the limit once we get those things in play as well. And your team will replicate the habits that you also portray as well. So if you want a really high productive team and you want to scale your business beyond you, and you want to take a year off and find someone to be able to take that retreat host over, then again, business mindset is very, very important, because we go into the business, which is, okay, so what am I doing here systematically, and can I improve that so that I could actually hand this across to, my best definition of a system is, can my 7-year-old copy what I'm doing right now in my business and do it? And if he can't, then it's way too complicated, right?
Oh my gosh, I give that advice, but in the sense of like copy. Yes. Like I tell them, like, go talk to a 7-year-old, present your pitch to them. If they do not understand, go back to the drawing board. Your copy is too complicated.
Yes, love that. 100%. That is such a great idea, because, and I always talk about the broken telephone concept. We used to whisper something to someone and they say it to the next person, and it was always way too complicated. It would never come back. So yeah, for us to make an impact at the moment, simplification is what it's all about.
Yeah. And I love that you're bringing this, because the reality is that retreats are not for the faint of heart, right? It does require like a passion to be in front of people in the same space, to maybe travel, to maybe, like have to deal with uncertain situations, right? So like a lot of people might be like, well, I'm safer behind the Zoom screen, and that's perfectly fine, right? But if we get to simplify the process of running retreats for your business, life is so much better.
Yeah, totally.
Like if we think about, like the average amount of time a first person doing a retreat without any coaching, any consulting, nothing, is 200 hours.
Yeah.
You might be like, oh my gosh, that's crazy amount of time. I can tell you, sometimes it takes more than 200 hours. That's why you need to price it properly, right? So it makes sense, financial sense, because you're running it as a business, not as a hobby, right? And like we're moving from being a hobby or, running it the same way you would run an additional online course that you're selling to actually having a retreat business and a mindset for a retreat business. But if you go and you hire someone who already simplified it, right, has all the steps and they're taking you through that, you can actually decrease these 200 hours to 50. And that's
Yeah, I love
crazy.
it. Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. I mean, the leverage of that just alone, just with what you said, is huge. And I think it's really important here that we don't go into any industry blind. We really can't afford to, because it's not about the saving of getting a coach at the start. It's about the amount that we lose on the back end if we don't do it properly, but also if we don't do it right, if someone comes in with expectations, again, going back to that competency graph, right at the start, high motivation, low skill, and then we define that we all of a sudden we've got the low motivation and low skill at the same time. Most people quit at that point because their expectation was not matched up to their outcome. And so we need, I mean, I would always hire the best possible team. I came from originally the fitness industry, and when we were working with elite athletes, they would have their own nutrition coach in the corner. They would have their own physio. They would have their own, physical trainer, mindset coach. Like they built their board of directors around them. So if you go into the retreat industry, or if you're thinking about going to the retreat industry and you haven't got your board of directors around you right now, you need to find them. Because it's high risk if you don't. And when I say it's high risk on your own enjoyment, your own passions, your own stress levels. You can't rock up to your own retreat with a massive line on your face from all the stress from trying to build it. Right? I mean, I remember my first few felt like that. I was 1 hour late to my own welcome party. Everyone was in their white dresses at the pool area of this first retreat venue, and we had a little kid at the time. And we were literally an hour late, and I just looked at Chantel and I said, I don't think I'm cut out for this. And again, that was one of these moments where she just didn't quit at the same time. But I think, well, in hindsight, I just wish I knew what I know now. And I think that what I love about what you do, what we do, what quite a few people in the industry are doing now, is that we're able to provide a system, a framework, accountability, and experience that just helps people to understand what to do next. And it'll just save so much time and money long term.
Oh my gosh, so much money. Like really, like if we like I like to quantify things in money because it's just easier for people to understand, for me to understand, right? So it just makes like sense to bring things into perspective, right? And think about 150 hours. How much money are you saving from those 150 hours? About the possibilities, about not having your first retreat where you're losing money. And let me tell you like how I started this space, because I did not start this space actually hosting my own retreats at the beginning. I come from an events and marketing background, sales and branding background, right? That's what I used to do for like 12 years or something like that. Events, even more, because I started when I was 16 years old. So a few years behind me from events. But I actually attended a retreat, and it was a deeply, deeply transformational retreat. There were 13 women there, and it changed my life. Okay. I just have moved back from Dubai. Like I was taking a sabbatical that did not end up being a sabbatical because a business was born. But like the plan was was gonna work on myself, take a sabbatical, and go to as many retreats as possible. So I went to this one, and it was just so deeply transformational for me. Like I really found like that version of myself that was lost, that maybe I didn't even know it existed. And I went and I asked the host, so when is the next one? Because I wanted everyone to come to that retreat. I wanted my mom, my friends, like everyone I could think of, because I was just like so shocked by the transformation. And they told me, we're not having another one. And I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, well, it's because we barely broke even. And I'm like, you have 13 people here. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
13 people signed up to come here and you didn't make any money. So I'm a little bit of like a geek nerd, and I started talking to people. And look, I was lucky that I was placed in a place where my family owns a retreat center in Mexico. So I had access to a lot of retreat leaders. And then I went out into the space and I just asked people, I was like, can I interview you? I want to know what's going on. Until I found out that, like, out of all the people I reached out to, 70% of those people did not profit from retreats. And they were just doing it because they thought it was a nice thing to add to their services.
Mm, mm.
And I was just like, no.
This is one of the most important topics, I think, in any business. But when we talk about retreats, you have to build a profitable retreat business, which means you need to know your numbers and you need to understand your profit margins, and you need to understand that, by doing X leads to Y. And it's so important, because what you've just described is what I see with a majority of people that are running retreats. And so, there's if you look at wellness tourism, it's $1 trillion industry at the moment, and it's expecting to be 2.5 trillion in the next 5 to 8 years. Huge growth expected.
Amazing.
Retreats,
Yeah.
massive growth coming. There's huge opportunity there. So there is money circulating like never before. Wellness as a whole, $5.6 trillion Global Wellness Insights just announced.
Yeah, there's people spending money.
There's people spending money everywhere. It's unbelievable, isn't it? And
Yeah.
so if you're not profiting from that, and sometimes, look, I understand the profitability conversation sometimes is a mindset thing more than ever. I mean, my money mindset piece was quite poor when I first got into business. And it wasn't until I kind of learned that I had to treat money like it was like my own child. I had to nurture it. I had to love it. I had to invest in it so it would continue to grow.
Yeah.
When I shifted my mindset to that was when I realized that everything I did when it came to business had to eventually be profitable. Otherwise, it was a charity, right? And so hey, if we're passionate, if we love things, we want to impact people and help people, I get that. But if we're putting our time into things, we've still got to make sure that it comes back to us in some way, because we've got to take care. It's like putting your oxygen mask on you first. You've got to look after you, because if you don't have the best of you to serve others anyway. So it's actually selfish when we don't have it come back to us, right? So it's important that we get that piece right. And that comes down to understanding margins and understanding how we're going to deliver on this. But it also, the way I look at this as well, there's another piece, and that is when you talked about something so important. When someone is at a retreat, if you don't have another offering for them at that retreat, you're missing one of the biggest pieces. Now, if I talk really openly about our retreat business, it's the profitability piece and the business piece is actually the next retreat that's coming. Yeah. So yes, there's still all, it's great on the front and the back, but the back part is so important, because that is your community build. That is your people coming back. It's people constantly engaging in the community, finding ways to bring their friends. And 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2 anymore. It equals 10 or 11 or 12, because people talk. And you get a lot of lessons from that. And I often talk, the power of one. So if this week I experienced a retreat and I loved it, and that person told one person, and then next week that person told one person of their friends to come with them, and you then went and found somebody else. By the end of 12 weeks, there would be 4,096 people that had heard of you from you just sharing with one and just teaching them to do the same. The power of leverage, right? And so only 10% of that happened. There'd still be 400 people that wanted to find out about your retreat. Now, if you don't have another retreat, what are you doing?
Yes, like what's going on? And I was on an event in Florida last week, and I met a woman that I met before, and she's like, her name is Linda Kane, and she also has she does events and whatnot, and she teaches a specific method for retreats. And like we were just having a conversation, because I'm so excited to meet you in person, right? Like it's just like we've had conversations in the past. We keep, meeting in different rooms and just, but we're never in the same location. And we were having a conversation. She was like, well, you know what? For me, it's all about high ticket entry, high ticket exit. right? So she works a lot with coaches. So it's not even about offering maybe even the next retreat, but it's about how do you then integrate what you learned in the retreat? Because it's a huge piece. A lot of people forget that the magic of a retreat is really in the integration. And I think the best way I can explain this is I have a friend that is a yoga teacher told me one thing. He's like, the stretches happen on the mat, but the transformation happens off the mat.
Yep. Beautiful.
After effect, right?
Yes.
And we see super highly packed retreats, and we're like, we think that's building the value of a retreat, and people want to come and be awake from 5 a.m. until 9 p.m. and then they leave. And I saw this in a vegan retreat, and they left, and they were like, where can we go get some burgers? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a really it's a good thing to talk into here because so we have an integration point that's built into our schedules, and it averages out at 75% of the retreat. So basically, imagine when we first have someone join us, there's a drop in. So there's always a different technique for different retreats to drop people in. Obviously, people have come from their busy lives, busy weeks, stressful family, this and that, and so we've got to find a way to drop people into the experience. And then I talk about the crescendo. So we're taking people on this, it's like the psychology of the guest experience, to a point. Yeah. And then it's the 75% mark, right? So let's say it was a 7-day retreat. It's probably close to day 5. At that point is where we start talking integration. So when we talk integration, we're talking making sure that the guests have skills, tools, support, mechanisms that they can take back into the real world. Now, the integration happens way beyond the retreat. But what are we doing as a team to ensure that we're empowering people with those tools? So now they've not just experienced it, but they've learned something that they can actually go and apply. And so we've actually built our schedules now as a reverse engineer from that 75% mark back, and then the 75% forwards. And what that allows us to do is be really, really clear on outcomes and how we are facilitating our role in that guest's transformation as well. So absolutely vital topic here.
So important. And it's all about fulfillment, right? Because if you leave a retreat completely overwhelmed,
yeah,
did the retreat host really do their job?
Totally.
Yeah. And I think this is so important. And I just want to bring back something that you said earlier, that you were talking about, when you're running your business and you, if one day you're in a good mood and then you want to do everything, and then on another day you're like, you don't want to do it and whatnot. And I think for me, it's also that is very, very connected to the space of running your business in a way that is profitable, that is sustainable. And if you're running your business that way, that means basically you're charging, you're putting your prices for your retreats based on self-worth. 100%. And that varies, right? Because one day I might wake up and be like, today I'm feeling like $2 million. So my retreat is going to be $50,000. And then another day I might wake up and I'm like, well, I'm 500,000. So I'm going to make my retreat for $400, whatever that is. And that's not really sustainable. You do not have a system to price and map out the profit and the actual value of the retreat.
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah. I mean, and also when it comes to the self-worth piece, it's also understanding the market that we're playing with, right? Knowing our avatar, knowing who we're talking to. And if my ideal market is a 35 to 55-year-old woman that's making $100,000 a year, that has a high stress threshold, but really is burnt out and looking for change, versus someone that's got a low cash amount coming in, not sure what they want, they just want to be around people. 2 different markets, 2 different price points, 2 different delivery systems. We can add our worth on that, but we've also got to make sure we know who they are too, right? So yeah. What I've really learned over the last few years, and I say this because I love constantly learning, and that is the higher we go, the more people come. So the mindset for me used to be,
I love it. Yes. Okay. Keep talking.
Yeah. So the mindset for me used to be, so my ideal audience is making 100K a year. I have to hit them within their budget. But And within reason, of course. Like I'm not talking extremes here. I'm just saying within reason, we still do. But if you can help that CEO that has been burnt out for the last 10 years, that is absolutely at their wits' end trying to find a solution and they haven't found it, and you know you can help them by solving their problem, they will pay whatever it takes to solve that problem. And
Yeah.
when we added more value in terms of the actual price amount, we started to attract a higher quality audience. We started to have more return users, and people were ultimately talking with such a higher vibe because, again, it's like attracts like, right? It's just a different ball game, which is really, really huge here. And so over time, what we started to see was these problems that most people have are so important to them that they will do whatever it takes to have that problem solved. They've been looking for years most of the time. And so if we can get really clear on the problems that we're solving here and not being sort of like wishy-washy around it, and I know you help people really define, right? It's like get really, really, really clear here so that you can deliver on that and just become so good at delivering on that solution. They will tell the whole world for the rest of their lives that their life changed because of that one experience. And you can't put a price on that. Now, the way that I look at this from an actual practical perspective is there's actual value and perceived value. If the actual value is, let's say, 3,000 US dollars, but the perception from the person was that it was only 2,000, they won't buy it, right? Because there's a mismatch. But if the perception is that it's worth 10,000 to them and they only have to pay 3,000, they're going to buy it. So a lot of it actually comes down to our language and how we're talking about what we offer and the outcome as well, which is, again, copy on websites. It's how we're actually delivering our message. Because if we stack things with value, if we say, hey, listen, come and do some yoga in a beautiful location, people are going to go, yeah, well, that sounds nice, but it's just a nice to have. It's not a necessity. Yeah. But if you say, listen, I'm offering yoga because this is going to help you to reduce stress. And I'm offering breathwork because this is going to help you to improve your longevity and your lifespan. And I'm offering nutrition because, cognitive and this and that. And you're actually stacking it with that value. And you think about what it's going to take for each person to get all of those outcomes on their own. That retreat now is worth 15, 20, 25,000 to that person. And they only have to pay 3, right? So that's where we start to, that's the match. And not everyone's going to be there. A lot of people are going to not see the value because they don't have a big enough problem yet. So find people with big problems, and not problems that are going to drain you, problems that they're just clear on, right? You don't want, you're not the person that has to take on the problem. You're just here to offer a solution, but it's important that you know what problem that you're solving.
Yeah, and I think you need to solve a problem that people are aware they have.
Yes, 100%. Again, awareness, right? Awareness is key to transformational change.
Because let's think about it. But I see it a lot. Like a lot of people, they really need this. So I'm gonna put a retreat because they really need this. Well, they might need it, but if they don't know they need it, they don't want it. And if they don't want it, they're not gonna buy it. It's as simple as that. And so many times when I work with different people, and I sometimes people will not come into my programs because I'm just I just dig, right? I'm just we have an interview and I'm like, yes, but what problem do you solve? And they're like, no, I want to solve everyone's problem. I'm like, no, you need to solve one problem. Which, if you were paid to solve one problem the rest of your life, which problem would that be? So anyone who's listening to this, which problem do you actually solve, right? Yeah. And then from there, you go and you figure out how you solve it, right? And this is so key for anyone's success. You need to be very niched in who you're serving.
And I think also bringing the conversation around awareness from a guest perspective, and kind of looking at it from our operating perspective, it's okay if someone doesn't see that you can solve their problems as well, right? Because so we know we can solve a lot of problems. Sometimes people just aren't there yet. They might be. So I talk about the 5. I actually have 6 A's. So the first A is awareness. So awareness is you've got to. So if I'm the guest here, let's put myself in the guest perspective. So I'm aware that smoking's not good for me. That's the first A. The second A is acknowledgement. I accept that I understand and acknowledge that I've been doing it for X amount of time. I also understand that it's not serving me, and I don't feel great from it. Then the third A is acceptance. So a lot of people know that smoking is not good for them. A lot of people know that they've been doing it for a particular period of time, but they haven't accepted that now is the time to change. So acceptance is the line in the sand moment. This is basically enough is enough with my problem. I have to do something about it. So often we're talking to people, they have the problem. We know they've got the problem. We know we can solve it, but they've not accepted that now's the time. And that's why when most people go and buy an online course, for example, only 20% of people open it, and only 20% of people that open it actually finish it, which is 4% total that got the course in the first place. And the reason for that is, again, they thought it was great to solve their problem, but they didn't accept that now's the time. But once we've accepted that now's the time, then we go into the fourth A, which is action. So this is like this is the action plan. So what do I do? So this for our clients is coming to the retreat. I'm going to go to the retreat to change this. And then the fifth A is the acceptance. Sorry, the accountability. The fourth is acceptance. Fifth is accountability. So if we summarize, because I've got my A's all over the place in my excitement, awareness is number one, acknowledgement is number two, acceptance is number three, action is number four, and then accountability is number five. And so most people are marketing their retreats to the action and the accountability. My retreat's amazing. Come and join us. Great community. But they haven't hit the problem and the person that is at the acceptance phase for the problem. Now, there's a next A. The final A is the appreciation. And so when someone has gone through the journey and they've made a change, there's a whole level of celebration of their change and their shifts and their whole, new version of themselves. And when we appreciate how far we've come and we acknowledge that as well, then we start to pay that forwards to other people. And that's where the client now starts to tell their friends about your retreat. And so it's important that we go on that journey, but we don't bash ourselves up as a retreat leader, that if we even do find the problem, that person might not be ready. And that's okay. I've had people that have joined a retreat 6 years after we first planted the seed. Actually, it reminds me just really briefly here. I had a mentor when I was 18 years old, and his name was John. And he had made $50 million in his business, really successful guy. And he asked me, like, how's business going? And I said, well, it's just starting out. It's not going great. And he said to me, what did you do 6 weeks ago? And I said, I have no idea. And he said, well, listen, what you can measure, you can improve. If you don't know what you did 6 weeks ago, you need to start tracking it right now. And I said, why 6 weeks ago? And he said, let me tell you about bamboo, right? I was like, where's this going? And he said, listen, you can go and plant lots of bamboo seeds. You can, you can go and put them in the ground and you can start to nurture them and you can start to water them. You're never going to know what's going on below the surface. You're never going to know the root systems that are starting to form and all of the stability that's starting to be created by this bamboo. And you're also never going to know which of the seeds are going to sprout. But when bamboo does sprout, some varieties sprout up to 2 meters in a day. So the concept was, James, you need to go and plant a lot of seeds. You need to find a lot of people with problems that you can solve. You need to water them. You need to nurture them. Keep the relationship strong. Even if that first one you thought was going to sprout and you were convinced it was going to sprout, then says no. Keep nurturing it. Keep watering it. Because one day it's going to absolutely shoot up. Now, for sales, John's context of 6 weeks was what you did 6 weeks ago, is because if you're having a bad week in your business this week, there's a good chance that your action 6 weeks ago was really bad.
Right. Yes.
So it's sort of like delayed gratification. But it could also take 6 years. And that's what I've seen often. So it's important that we remember that no matter who we're talking to, over time, the root system is forming. People are becoming very clear on what you do. They're becoming very aware on what they need. And when they get to the acceptance phase, that's when things start to show up in our lives as well.
Oh my gosh. I love the way you placed it, like in these 7 A's. It's just so clear and really like being in that place of acceptance. And I can see it like in my business. And I invite everyone who's listening to this, think about it. Have you ever had a client come back to you and be like, now I'm ready?
Yeah.
Because I get a lot of this. Because think about it, retreats takes a second, right? There is a couple of things you need to have in place, unless you're starting like from scratch and you're like, retreats is what I'm gonna do, and that's my thing, and that's my focus. Usually, there is like a couple of things that need to be happening in your business for you to be ready to move into retreats. And I do not mean you need to have 100,000 followers, so do not think that's it. But think about more in this space, like I need to know what problem I solve, and I can solve it online, so then I can start solving it in person, right? So it's kind of like being very clear, like knowing who's your ideal client, right? Like knowing it kind of like it's your best friend. So these things need to nurture, grow, and you need to be very clear about it, right? There is a lot of self-worth involved in the space. Can I actually take my online business to an in-person space? Because it's a different identity, right? I talk about in some of my master classes, like you have to move from retreat dreamer to retreat creator,
I
right?
love that. Mm.
Your identity needs to shift. And when we're thinking about it, and we need to talk about this acceptance piece, right? Not everyone is going to accept the moment you show up into the space. And that's why you need to have constant marketing. Even if you don't have the next day for your retreat, you need to keep building the momentum about the problem that you solve. And I don't know, if you have a podcast, talk about it on your podcast. If you're having conversations with random people, you talk about it, because that's really growing and keeping your marketing touch points, right? I'm going a little technical here, in place, because
Yeah, I love it.
now people need to see
Yeah,
you tons of time before they buy, and then
totally.
they need
They've
to
got,
be ready.
yeah, that's exactly right. And so the likelihood of someone making a purchase for a retreat on their first exposure is so minimal that your point is just so vital. I mean, like I think that 1 minute that you just spoke is everything, because without that, without the consistent touch points, people only buy from people they like and trust. And if they don't see you, how can they like and trust you, right? You have to show up, and this is where we're in this world of, we are building personal brands. I mean, we're building companies and personal brands, and people need to understand the significance of both of these talking to each other right now. And if we're not consistent, even if we don't have another retreat, but we're not consistent with adding value, then we're not going to gain. Again, it's the whole concept that if we help enough people get what they want, we'll get what we want. So if we do end up launching something in the future, but we haven't got an audience in the time between now and then we're starting from scratch every single time. And we don't want to be starting from scratch every single time. We want to be adding value consistently and building a brand. And that could be a whole nother podcast on that side as well.
Oh my gosh, yes. And I have to tell everyone who's listening here, because I'm like super real about like my business journey and what has happened and whatnot. And I took this consulting job for a retreat center. And it was supposed to be a couple of hours a day, and it was not. It took everything I had except for the course that I already launched. And it was a 6-month thing. When I came back after that, and I was like, I did not quit, but I just like wrapped up the things, and I'm like, thank you so much. This is the project. Here you go. Now you can, like, there's SOPs. Someone else can actually execute, right? Because I love SOPs. It's my thing. And then I came back to my business, and I was like, almost like I had to start my business from scratch.
Mm.
Like everything I've done, and like, of course there were some seeds, but I was not nurturing my seeds, right? Like I was not, watering the plants. So then guess what? I had to go and like restart all the connections and all the things, and people have to start seeing me again, and the algorithms on social media, right? So consistency is key for any business,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's something that you've done absolutely amazing for this past like 25 years, in like being consistent in who you are, why you're doing what you're doing, and it just has like success written all over it.
Yeah, I think it really is that. I mean, if you were to summarize everything for me, it's developing that resilience muscle so that you do stay consistent. So, never taking anything personally, being permanent with that protocol production, and just really making sure that you have a minimum threshold that you be proud of every night when you go to bed. I just always look at that. I mean, and having kids now, we often, will do the gratitude piece at the end of the day. What are you proud of today? What are you grateful for? And it makes me really reflect again on my journey for that day. And did I do what I know I was capable of doing? Because if we show up to, even if it's 70% of our potential each day, we will absolutely hit this game out of the park. We will do so well because we're just consistent. And people talk about potential and optimization and all of that, but they talk about that and they haven't got the foundation when they talk about that a lot of the time. The foundation it's a little bit like health and nutrition, right? If you're eating a well-balanced, colorful, nutrient dense foundation, then you're going to have more energy to be able to go out and jump on the bike and go for a run and do all of these great things because, you're fueling your body. And the business is a very similar thing. There are certain levels of action and activity every single day that is the nutrition to your business. And if you don't do those, and you just expect to go out for 1 week and sell. And if you don't sell, you don't get any results. You start asking why this is not work. It's not working because you weren't feeding it the nutrition right from the start, right? So we've just got to remember consistent, simple steps, systemization. We're going to have a lot of fun in the future if we just do that for enough amount of time. 10,000 hours.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Just, 10,000 hours and then you have fun. No, I mean, you can still have fun while you're doing it because you're passionate about it, right? Like you're still passionate, even though you're not running your business from passion.
Totally. Well, I like saying the journey is the reward. We always think the reward's when we get to the 10,000. No, the journey is the reward, right?
Oh, yeah.
Once we get there, we look back. That's the reflection of going, that's the little appreciation A at the very end, going, hey, man, I made it. It's like climbing Mount Everest. If you got put on there by a helicopter at the very top, would you appreciate the whole thing? No, you'd just be on there for a bit, look around. And it's funny because I was speaking to a guy a few years ago that did climb Mount Everest, South African guy. And I was in this event and got to speak to him at the end. Anyway, long story short, he basically trained for 10 years to get to the top of Everest. He got within, it was something like 50 meters or 100 meters from the actual summit, and a blizzard was coming and they had to make a life or death decision and he had to go back down. And so then he survived, and then he went another time and eventually got to the top. And I said, how long were you up there? And he said, a matter of moments, right? Like we just looked and we were there for probably five minutes or so. And I said, how long did it take you to climb it? He said 15 years, right? That's the journey of any entrepreneur in any business. And I think we're just in a time at the moment where people expect instant gratification because of the way that social is set up. Everyone sees the glory, but not the story. And the story is, it's the day you're going to learn so much from the story, and we've got to enjoy the story. If we enjoy the story, that's when we actually do achieve the glory as well.
Oh, I love that. Oh my gosh, James, this was absolutely amazing. It's such a pleasure having you here. Like, I mean, so much knowledge to share with everyone listening. I hope everyone who listened to this absolutely loved this episode, because I did. Like, I mean, such a wealth of knowledge. Thank you so much for being here. But I mean, I know people now want to go to your retreats because, I mean, they know they get the results, you care, and you are, providing tons of value. So how can people find more about your retreats and all this amazing services? Because I know you do not have just one company. So how can people find more about you?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So look, there's a few different ways of doing things, but we'll keep it simple today. So retreats is Reignite Retreats, so REIGNITE retreats.com. You can also go to the Instagram, which is the same thing as well. And there's some beautiful retreats happening. We've got 26 retreats happening this year, so feel free to have a look there and tap in. But if you want to reach out personally, I'm also at jamesyates.me. So jamesyates.me is the website. So feel free to connect in there as well.
Perfect. And we'll drop everything in the show notes, so you can all go just and click and find out a little bit more. And just on a note, and this is a learning opportunity for everyone, and some of you might know this, but think about, his website is the same handle as his Instagram. This is about creating a consistent brand. If your website is not the same as your Instagram, you are missing out. So if you can go do one little thing on your business today, maybe just go change that handle so people can find you in different places and be like, oh, this is the same person.
Definitely makes it easy. And also the same profile photo across all platforms is always helpful as well, isn't it? So,
100%.
Look, it's been an absolute pleasure to be here, Lenny. I just appreciate everything you're doing for the industry. I was saying to you before our call, you just pop up everywhere. So you're doing a lot of good things and doing them very well. So definitely, love learning from you. And just appreciate the time to be able to share a bit about what we're doing, and look forward to supporting you and everyone in the future.
Thank you so much, James. We will meet again for sure very, very soon in person. I can tell you. I know it's going to happen.
Let's do it.
Thank you. Bye. Wow, what a great episode. If you like our podcast, How to Run Profitable Retreats, leave us a review and share it with a friend.